Okay, this is our assignment, our little talk. Our art group has decided to do the talk on stress. Now, I'll be giving the presentation. This will be a presentation that I can give to a target audience that could be anyone basically from high school students onwards. High school students, parents, teachers, uni students, those in the workplace, whether they're working for themselves, working in a factory, working in an office space. Stress affects everybody from the day you're born to the day you die. You have a stress response in the body. Children go through stress. So my target audience can be anybody. I'll be imagining I'm going to be talking to a target audience that will be, say, parents of either primary school or high school teachers. It could be at a parent-teacher night. I could do this talk at a gym, at a workplace, at uni, high school. So I'll imagine I'm talking to parents who have been through the workplace, who know a bit about stress, they've heard the word plenty of times, they've experienced stress in their lives in some way or another. So that's been, and so I'll take it from there as if I'm talking to you guys as now. I'm going to be talking about stress. What I'm here to do is to explain and educate a little bit more about what stress actually is. A lot of people have heard the term, used the term themselves, but what is stress? What is actually going on? So I'll educate on what stress is, what happens to the body during stress, what's actually going on, and then I'll explain the benefits and the side effects of stress. There are some good points to it and some bad points to it. There are some reasons, and I'll explain as we go so you can understand the reasons why things create problems in the body when you get stressed. There are organs, there are parts of the brain that actually get damaged because of stress long term, and you'll be able to understand more about it. And I'll give the benefits of avoiding stress or ways to reduce stress. So it's not just going to be about, oh, here's all the bad stuff and then see you later. So I'll give you some ideas, ways to help, ways to reduce stress, things that have been shown to reduce stress, and some benefits out of that. Now, hopefully you guys, as an audience, as a group here of parents, you can understand and realise that there are benefits not only for yourselves, but to be able to teach and tell your children about, because they'll go through the same thing, or they'll even be in the same situation. And it's about priorities and lifestyle changes, small or big, that can, if you at least know what stress is and what happens in the body, then you can make those educated decisions and you can alter the priorities as you see fit. Because I'm sure looking after yourself is of high value, and looking after your kids is probably even higher value for you. There was a research done by Lurcher in the Journal of Acoustical Society of America. It was republished about 2 months ago. It took 115 9-year-old kids and showed that noise levels in suburbs actually impacted their stress levels. They had a group, and this was done in Austria, in just some towns in Austria. They had a group, half of these kids were in neighbourhoods where the average outside noise was about 50 decibels. They had the other group in average outside noise levels of about 60 decibels. So it's not, and the sound was coming from trains and local traffic. It wasn't like they were living next to an airport or anything like that, but just those kids that were in the 60 decibel neighbourhood, just a slightly louder neighbourhood, they found that these kids had higher levels of cortisol in their blood, higher levels of adrenaline in their blood overnight. Higher levels of adrenaline. They also had a higher systolic blood pressure. If you've ever taken or had blood pressure taken, you've got the, say, ideal is about 120/80. Probably heard those numbers. 120, the first number, that's the systolic. These kids at 9 had a higher systolic rate than these kids because they were in a slightly noisier neighbourhood. And when they were given a stress test, which was a simple reading test, these kids had a heart rate that spiked a lot faster and a lot sharper. In other words, they're on edge. They've got a higher systolic blood pressure, they're more on edge, and they've got adrenaline in their blood during the night. And these are 9-year-old kids. These are not people that are in the workplace or have assignments and exams due and have all sorts of headaches with the mortgage or anything like that. These are 9-year-olds. So hopefully by telling you about stress and what it is, not only can I help you guys, but I can help you to help your children and your parents and anybody else you want to help when it comes to changes that you can do, simple changes that can reduce stress in your life or alter it in a way so that it doesn't have the negative impacts that it may have been having till now. Hopefully that's something that you guys will be interested in. Sound okay? So what is stress? What happens with stress? Stress is... Does anyone know what stress is? Can anyone define what stress is? You've probably used the word plenty of times. Stress is a biological and physiological response in your body to a perceived threat. So I'll explain what I'm saying there. A response in your body. The same way if you cut yourself, blood will come out and then eventually the blood will harden up and scab. That's a response to the cut. You've got a response in your body to a perceived threat. It doesn't have to be a real threat, it doesn't have to be a real danger. You just have to think that there's a danger. One of the, drawbacks to being such a social species, that it's no longer about finding food to survive the day and shelter and avoid getting eaten in the jungle or on the plains or wherever we would be. Because if they were the only things we had to worry about, not as big an issue. Stress doesn't seem to be as big a problem. Once we add all the complications that we've managed to add into our lives, it becomes more than just surviving. There's plenty of things. The more we have in our lives, the more things we can worry about. It's not about removing all of those things. It's about being aware of what's happening in the brain and in the body, so that we can deal with it a lot better. So, it's a response to a perceived threat. It's the same, to keep it simple, it's the same response biologically, whether you step out in front of a moving vehicle or whether you worry about paying the gas bill next month. Same response, the same hormones are being released, the same neurotransmitters having an impact on the same organs and the same cells. Right. Short-term stress is really good for us. It's a response that we use to get ourselves out of danger. You step out in front of a car, you want to be switched on, you want to be able to make sure that you can do everything you can to survive that moment. And that's why we have stress. All the animals have a stress response. We have it as well. I'll explain what happens. This is what happens when it's stressed. A lot of what I'm going to say is based on a book written by Robert Sapolsky. Robert Sapolsky is a professor in Stanford University in the States, and he's been studying stress and teaching stress for 30 years. He's written a few books. One book is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and it's a very simplified version of talking about the pathways and what happens inside the body and what happens, good and bad, when we get stressed. So what I'll be using from him. When we step out in front of that moving vehicle, what happens is we have two pathways in our brain, to communicate to the rest of the body to say, let's change things. And the reason we're going to change things is because we want to take our body, if you imagine the body as a car driving along, and we're sitting it in economy mode. So we're going nice and cruisy, we're looking after, not burning too much fuel, looking after the engine, looking after the tyres. It's all about longevity. Now, when we step out in front of that moving vehicle, everything changes. It's all about surviving that moment. It's like taking it from economy into high performance. We maximise everything we need to get out of that dangerous situation. We use two pathways to do it. We have an initial instant pathway, which is the nervous system, and then we have a hormonal system and a hormonal pathway. The nervous system is like picking up a phone, making a phone call. It's pretty much instant. It's not light speed, but it's very fast. The same way you can pick up a phone and make a call to anybody anywhere on the planet, the brain does the same thing, and it can target and it can hit organs anywhere out throughout the body pretty much instantly. What it does, as soon as you step out in front of that vehicle, your eyes dilate. Your eyes dilate so that you get more information in. That happens instantly. Your heart rate instantly begins to speed up. Your heart actually beats a resting heart. You can take the heart out of your body and it'll beat on its own because it has cells in there that it's got automatic pacemaker cells that make the heart beat on its own without the brain. They beat at around 110 beats per minute. Your resting heart rate now is probably around 60, 70 maybe. And the reason for that is because your brain is constantly suppressing the speed of this heart. Now, if you step out in front of the moving vehicle, not only does your brain switch that off straight away, allowing the heart to go up to about 110 beats per minute, but it also throws another signal down there to release a neurotransmitter called noradrenaline, releases that onto the heart, and your heart will then speed up. It'll speed up in two ways. It'll pump faster and harder. The contractions are actually harder, so that it pumps more blood, lots more blood through the body. Another thing that happens instantly through the nervous system, your arteries, your blood vessels in your trunk actually constrict, and the blood vessels in your arms and legs dilate. So more blood comes out of this area and into the limbs, so that you are ready to either fight your way out of this problem or run out of this problem. Those things happen instantly. There is a second pathway. The hormonal pathway is a little bit slower. Think of a hormone pathway as sending a letter in a letterbox through snail mail. Right? It's a slower process. We're going to use hormones because that's what a hormone is. A hormone is a message being released by a gland in your body, and it's going to go through the bloodstream to target cells or organs. So it's like sending a letter through the post. It's slower, yes, but you can mass produce, you can mass leaflet drop. You know, bomb a certain area with a whole bunch of hormones. So it is a slower process, and I'll use a diagram to explain the hormonal pathway. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll explain it because there's also, when the hormones reach the adrenal glands, they're going to release a few hormones that I want to talk to you about, so that you understand. Now, in the brain, what first happens, we've got something called the hypothalamus. It's right in the middle of the brain. It's awesome. This thing it's the size of your little fingernail, but it controls so much in your body. I'll just do a little diagram of it so we can orientate ourselves and we know where we are. So it's kind of something like this. Hopefully that can be seen. This hypothalamus, it's like this is a side-on view, as if I was standing this way, facing like that. And it is, it's a little sandwich type of nucleus in the brain, right in the middle. You've actually got your brain stems kind of here. So you've got a brain stem coming up here, and then this is sticking out in front of it. This controls whether you feel hungry or not, whether you get thirsty, whether you get tired, whether you get stressed and nervous and sweating, a whole bunch of things this is controlled. Whether you feel like you're going to the toilet, all of those things controlled by this guy. This one is purely automatic. It does what it's told. It's not the instigator. It does what it's told. It controls a lot of things, but it doesn't think for itself. When you step out in front of that vehicle, a moving vehicle, you've got a section of the brain that lights up. It's called the amygdala, with an A. I'll put a little amygdala. Now, the amygdala, you've got one on either side in your temporal lobes of the brain. Whenever you get anxious, nervous, worried, stressed, any of those set off the amygdala. The amygdala is part of your limbic system. It is part of your emotional system in the brain. When it gets worried or scared or nervous, it yells to the hypothalamus and says, we need to do something about this, release the stress hormones. Let's fire this machine up. Let's get out of this danger. I'm worried. So that's what the amygdala does. That sets this thing off. Fully automatic, does what it's told. It'll release some hormones up there coming down into this little guy here. This is the pituitary gland, the master gland in your body. It sits up right in the middle of the brain. It releases a whole bunch of hormones. One of them comes down to the adrenal glands sitting on top of your kidneys. And your adrenal glands then release, once they get told like this, the hormones coming from here, it will release adrenaline, noradrenaline, and another hormone called cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Adrenaline and noradrenaline, think of those as if you were in a war, in a battle, adrenaline and noradrenaline are your front soldiers. On the front line, foot soldiers with the machine guns. That's your adrenaline and noradrenaline. Cortisol is not on the front line. You won't find cortisol at the front. You'll find cortisol back at the army bases, and they'll be building tanks, aircraft carriers, bombs. That's to make sure, the cortisol's job is to make sure that this fight is sustained, that you can keep running, that you're not going to run out of energy. There's a whole bunch of ways that it does it. Cortisol, one of the things it does in the body is it goes to stored glucose and releases it so that we can use it for energy. Here's how this works. When you eat food, your body does 3 things with the sugar. One of them isn't release the sugar, urine. It doesn't pee it out. It keeps all of it, holds onto all the sugar that it eats. It does 3 things. First of all, it throws it into the bloodstream to be used as energy. We use the glucose as energy. We use it by attaching insulin to it. That allows it to go into the cells and we burn it up. Whatever sugar doesn't get used in the bloodstream immediately after we've eaten gets stored, it gets converted to glycogen and gets stored in our glycogen storage places. There's 2 places we store glycogen in our body. One is the liver and one is muscle tissue. Once those stores of glycogen are full and you can't pack any more glycogen into those storage, the remaining glucose gets converted to fat. It doesn't get peed out, it gets converted to fat and stored in fat cells. When those fat cells are full, the body still doesn't pee out the glucose that's left in the bloodstream. It makes new fat cells, converts the glucose into fat and stores it into these new fat cells, and just keeps making more and more new fat cells. It will never pee out, unless you've got a disease, like a diabetes or something like that, it will never pee out the glucose, it'll store it. That's why we live in a country where more than half, over 50%, are clinically obese. We are the fattest nation in the world. This is one of the reasons. We eat a lot of sugar. Converts to fat, gets stored as fat. Now, when you go under stress response, the cortisol is releasing the stored glycogen, converts it into glucose so that we can use it for energy. Now, short term, awesome. Long term, there's a problem with having glucose in the bloodstream because it's coarse and it does damage to the arterial walls, the inside of the arteries and veins. Think of them as getting scratched up by the arteries, or by the sugar. Right? Irritated, inflamed, scratched. That leads to things like atherosclerosis, which is the big reason people get heart disease and heart attacks. So you can see the link there. If you fire this off too much and you have too much cortisol going on, it's releasing too much sugar into the bloodstream, long term, you're going to start having heart disease issues, along with the fact that you've released all this noradrenaline sitting onto the heart, so your heart's running faster and more powerful, therefore the blood pressure is increased. So does it make sense? Your adrenal glands, by the way, are going to be absolutely smashed after a while. They're going to be depleted because they're going to be constantly firing. If you keep firing this off, you're going to cause those problems long term. Short term, we need it. Long term, it's going to cause problems. Now, there is a part of the body that actually switches this off. It turns all the system off. It's another part of the brain. It's called the hippocampus. I'll do a little H for the hippocampus. The hippocampus, also sitting out in the temporal lobes. The hippocampus actually, one of the things it does a fair few things. It controls a spatial awareness, and it also controls, or it has a lot of short-term memory stored there in the hippocampus. One of the things it also does is monitor the level of cortisol, the stress hormone. Once the stress hormone, the cortisol levels get to a certain level in the blood, it then sends a signal across to the hypothalamus and says, that's it, we've got enough, shut it down. And that's the system, that's the response. If we were a zebra out on the plains and we were getting chased by the lion, we got away, we got into an area, there's no more lions around, we can calm back down. This guy will go, yeah, we've got too much cortisol, shut it down, and we can relax. And it switches off, goes back to just eating grass, right? Now, in our environment, the downside to the way we live is that, what if we don't switch this off? What if this guy says, all right, that's enough, but this guy keeps saying, no, I'm still stressed, I'm still worried, I've still got problems and issues, right? Deadlines that have to be met. Keep firing us off. Remember, this thing's purely automatic, does what it's told. If you've got this guy yelling, saying, release, 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 and this guy saying, turn it off, what happens here? You know what it does? Whoever yells the loudest, that's who wins, and that's what it'll do. So if you keep getting stressed, if you keep getting worried, if you keep getting anxious and nervous and all of that, this guy will keep yelling, it'll yell louder and louder and louder, and you'll keep releasing the cortisol, it'll keep going. That's the long-term effects. One of the downsides to that is cortisol, long-term, not only is it having an impact and it's wearing out your heart, it's wearing out your arteries, it also suppresses your immune system, because your body goes through a system where it, when you're stressed, when you step out in front of the car, it needs to switch off things you don't need. There's a moment of panic, we've got to get out of this. Let's go into high performance, things we don't need, turn them off. The air conditioner, we don't need to turn it off. We step out in front of a car, we don't need digestion right now, switch it off. We don't need growth and tissue repair, switch the growth hormones off. Immune system is a little bit interesting. The immune system spikes initially. They've done tests and they've shown that people that watch, they got people to watch a horror movie, and for the first 20 minutes or so, they actually found that there's the immune system via saliva tests actually increased in that initial part of being stressed while watching this movie. By the end of the movie, the immune system had just floored. So your immune system, long term, through this pathway, long term the immune system gets absolutely squashed. We don't need the immune system right now, we've got to get out of danger. Getting sick in a couple of weeks is not the priority right now. It's about surviving this moment. So we suppress the immune system. So cortisol is doing all of these things in the body. It's trying to help, but long term it's creating problems. It also, and this is a little bit scary, but it also damages the hippocampus. Long-term cortisol has an effect on the hippocampus. It damages this guy in the brain. Remember, this is where we keep our short-term memory. Right, so you're damaging, not only are you damaging short-term memory and spatial awareness, you're damaging the one thing that's trying to switch this system off. You get yourself into a downward spiral now because this guy's yelling louder and louder, making it harder for this guy to switch it off. It's making it easier for this guy to keep going. See the downward spiral that people can get into? So, what can we do? There's so many things that we can do, now that I've scared everybody enough, there are so many things that we can do that can change this. It's not about taking a pill to lower your blood pressure if you've got this pathway going on. Now, I'm not stepping on GP's toes here and saying don't listen to them. I'm saying just have a think about it. if this pathway is increasing your blood pressure, is a tablet to decrease your blood pressure, to suppress the heart, is that changing this at all? Is it changing the level of cortisol that you've got in your body? Is it changing the impact it's having then on this? If that's the case, what you're doing, if it's not doing that, what you're doing then is you're taking a tablet to try and deal with some of the side effects, not the problem. Same with trying to take things to try and boost your adrenal glands because they're being smashed, they're shattered because they're being overworked. All right? Again, this is what's starting it and firing it off, suppressing the adrenal glands to try and calm them down, isn't stopping this pathway. This is what we've got to look at. Now, I'm not suggesting we do a lobotomy and take the amygdala out because we need it, but there are things that we can do to calm this guy down. So here's the good news. Here's the things that we can do to help reduce this system and its negative impact on us. Does that sound okay to everybody? Get the good stuff now. One thing we can do is exercise. People have probably heard exercise is really good for you when you're stressed. Yes, depends. What exercise does, when you are stressed and you've got all that extra sugar running in your bloodstream, what a great idea to exercise and to get rid of it all. Your body's expecting you to be running or fighting right now anyway. That's why it's got the sugar in there. So yes, exercising is going to get rid of that sugar that's in your bloodstream, that's going to allow or reduce the impact that it's going to have on the arteries, and the inside of the arteries, so it doesn't scratch them up as much. Does that make sense? But it doesn't get rid of this. It doesn't stop this guy from firing off. If you're still worried, it's still going to fire off. So you're not actually stopping that so much. You're just getting rid of another symptom. You're doing it without medication, great, but you're only getting rid of another symptom. Unless you are enjoying the exercise. If you enjoy the exercise, you release endorphins out of the brainstem, out of the reticular formation part of the brainstem. When you release endorphins, it has an impact on throughout the body, including the amygdala, which is part of your limbic system, part of your emotional system, and it calms this guy down. If you enjoy the exercise you're doing, it'll calm this guy down, which will slow down and start to turn off the impact that it's having by releasing the adrenaline and cortisol. Of course, if you don't like the exercise you're doing, it's probably going to make this worse. So exercise, yes, as long as you enjoy it. Any exercise, as long as you enjoy it. The best exercise system ever invented anywhere in the world, you ready for it, is the one that you'll do. Okay, enjoy it. Enjoy the exercise. You'll have the benefits of getting rid of the sugar, and you'll have the benefits of calming this guy down. Being in a quiet environment. Being in a quiet environment, as I said before, that study that showed that those kids that were getting stressed just because they were in a noisier neighbourhood. They also found, even in the workplace, they did a study headed by Gary Evans at the Cornell University. They took women in the workplace. They had a whole bunch of women, average age of about 37. They had them in one group were in a quiet office, and one were in an office that was slightly noisier. They got them after 3 hours, they tested their urine levels, and they found that those in the slightly noisier workplace had increased cortisol levels in their urine. So increased cortisol levels in the urine because they were in a slightly noisier workplace. They also found that they did 50% less ergonomic adjustments to their workstation. In other words, they didn't correct their posture, they didn't look after themselves. They also gave them all a impossible puzzle to solve. And those in the slightly noisier environment had far fewer attempts to solve the impossible puzzle. So in other words, they had stress hormone in their urine and in their bloodstream. They didn't look after themselves, and they weren't as efficient or effective in their work. And the most interesting part about it is when asked at the end of those 3 hours, none of the women said that they were in a stressful environment or felt stressed. These women said they didn't feel stressed, even though their results showed that they were under stress. Point being, a slightly noisy environment can cause stress. Therefore, we know now that if we go into a place, if we're doing prayer or meditation, or we find our workplace and we can have some quiet time during the day, like nice and quiet, we can calm this guy down, we can switch this system off, we can give your body a rest during the day. And that's achievable for anybody. Even if you say, well, I can't switch off the noise in the office, you can put earplugs in your ear. There's things that you can do that you can reduce the impact of a noisy environment to reduce the stress on your body. You can do enjoyable hobbies throughout the week. This is not something that you work for the weekend. Working 5 days under stress to try and get 2 days of enjoyment, if anything, switch that around. Your majority of the week you should be having enjoyable moments so that you're not under stress more than you are in a relaxed state, if that makes sense. And the enjoyable hobbies are going to release endorphins, make this guy calm down, reduce the stress impact on the body. Social interactions, this is an interesting one. When you're under stress, not only are you releasing all the hormones for adrenaline, noradrenaline and cortisol, you actually release out of the back here, this posterior part of the pituitary gland, you release oxytocin. Oxytocin gets nicknamed the cuddle hormone because you release oxytocin when you give people hugs. It's a very social interacting hormone. When you release under stress, you release large amounts of oxytocin. Oxytocin tries to then go and relax the muscles in the veins and arteries, in the blood vessels. It also goes to the heart and aids in regeneration and repair of heart cells. That's one of the things oxytocin does. So, knowing that, if you find yourself in a position where you are under stress, if you go and then talk to people, which increases your oxytocin levels, so you get people to help you in your stress environment, or if you go and, if you're not that type of person, if you go and help other people, you've still got that social interaction, or you're going to give people hugs, you're going to release more oxytocin, which gives you the positive benefits and looks after your body more when you're under stress. So even if you don't avoid and don't switch this off, you're at least firing a system that's trying to look after your body when you're under stress. If you have the belief that stress is going to kill you, stress is bad for you and going to kill you, you're going to fire this off even more. It's going to make it even worse. If you believe that short-term stress is good for you, that it's a good thing for your body to go on a roller coaster every now and then, to go on something that gives you a thrill, a bit of an enjoyment, a bit of an adrenaline rush. They're actually good. It fires off a whole bunch of things. It spikes or peaks the immune system for a little bit. It does increase your short-term memory because you need to make sure that you can get out of that dangerous situation. So you've got to remember where the exits are, remember everything is. So it boosts things in the short term. It's actually good for us. And it also releases oxytocin as well. So if we're in a mindset that, you know what, I'm getting stressed here, but it just means it's my body going into high performance now, so I can get through this situation. If you start to think of it as a positive, it will actually have an impact on this and release more oxytocin, the sort of thing that you get when you are in a courage situation rather than a feared situation. And massage. Massage is another way that you can reduce your stress. There was an article in the International Journal of Neuroscience, headed by Field in 2005. It showed that a massage reduces cortisol levels, so reduces cortisol levels that's being released out of this because of that, and increases serotonin and dopamine levels in the body. Serotonin, a peer-reviewed publication titled The Expanded Biology of Serotonin, headed by Miles Berger, states that 95% of the serotonin in our body, it's a hormone, 95% of the serotonin in our body it gets released into our gut to aid digestion. So now we're boosting up our digestion system by getting a massage. Serotonin also works in other areas of the body. It works on the liver. It helps to regenerate the liver. It helps in the brain. It is important in regulation of virtually all brain function. It's also, it gets released by an area back here to aid as your body's sleeping pill. Your brain allows light to pass through your eyes. It comes through here, it goes through the hypothalamus to an area called the epithalamus, sitting just on top of the brainstem. There's a gland in here called the pineal gland. When light stops going to here, the pineal gland releases serotonin and melatonin, which is your body's natural sleeping pill. Now, it only happens when you get pitch black. All right? So when you're getting a massage and your head's down in the headpiece and it's black, your pineal gland will start to release serotonin and melatonin, which will aid in all those things that I've just said, as well as reducing the sympathetics, which is being fired off by this guy and all of this stuff. All of this stuff, when you're in the stress, is to maximise performance. In other words, your sympathetic nervous system is going through the roof, firing off, keeping you awake, alert, all of that stuff. It has an adverse effect on, so if that's your sympathetics, it squashes, or suppresses, in simple terms, your parasympathetics. Parasympathetics are what are active at night. When you go to sleep and you get tired and go to sleep, it kind of swings the other way. The alertness, all of that shuts down, and parasympathetics do their job, which is to repair and recover and improve and maintain homeostasis in the body. Right? It helps regenerate, repair. Serotonin and melatonin aid that. Dopamine as well. When you get massaged, it increases dopamine levels. Dopamine is a feel-good drug in your body. It's a hormone that feels good. It's responsible for a lot of things. One of the main things is it's involved in muscle control. If your brain doesn't produce dopamine, that's called Parkinson's disease. So it has an impact on motor control, fine motor control, and getting a massage increases your dopamine levels. So it aids in those things. It aids in feeling good. If you feel good, this guy's going to calm down. Okay? So hopefully these are some ideas that you can use now that can either manage by social interaction and social events to control the stress without switching it off, or you now know some ideas of making things quiet, of enjoying hobbies, getting some exercise, getting some massage on a regular basis. I mean, if that's what it is, if you have to decide now your priorities in life that you've got to, I've got to get a massage, say, every month, and get some hobbies that I enjoy and put them into my life, and I'll boost my immune system. I'll reduce my blood pressure. It's tough, but it's a priority for you. If health or longevity is something that you think is an idea, or if you want it for your kids, if you want to be around for them long term, this is a way that could certainly enhance that. Looking after those things, looking after your immune system, once you build that back up again where it should be able to fight off most of the bugs going around, so that when flu season comes around, you don't be going and getting flu shots. If you can have an immune system that is strong enough to do its job, do what it's there for. A strong immune system, which isn't depleted by this, and suppressed by the stress response, will certainly aid disease-free years for you, as well as the fact that those studies show that you'll look after yourself better if you're not stressed. You'll have better adjustments to your posture and your environment. You'll be more efficient and effective at work. You'll try harder, you'll work harder when you're not stressed. Lots and lots of benefits. Hopefully that's given you something to think about with your attitudes and beliefs. And it's attitudes and beliefs, because this here is controlled by your emotional state. So what you believe to be vital and important, if you believe it's vitally important and life or death to pay the gas bill on time, to get the holiday for next month planned absolutely perfect, if that's something that's going to fire this off because you're worried about it, and you're creating that life or death response in your body, And then it's up to you whether you decide that, you know what, maybe it's not that important, maybe it's not the highest value that I do that to myself. Maybe it's better for me to go and enjoy some time with my friends, to get some hobbies, to go into a dark room and just be quiet. Get a massage every now and then. Things that we can do to look after ourselves. So hopefully that's helped you guys. Hopefully that's given you a chance to think and have a look at that sort of thing. If you have any questions about stress, let me know. Hopefully now you are better educated. You know more about what stress is. When somebody says the word stress or that they feel stressed, you know what's going on in the body, you know what's going on in their body, and you have ideas of how you can help or how they can be helped. So with that, enjoy your day. Hopefully if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you.